Chapter 11. Shadows in the Camp. Strategy Circle. Evening settled over Hebron with a hush, the last rays of light slipping over the burial ridge where the cave of Machpelah now stood sealed behind its heavy stone. The air smelled of olive wood, smoke, and dry grass. The ceremony was over, but Joseph's mind remained restless. He stepped away from the others just before dusk, his cloak drawn tightly against the cool wind. He met Dan in a cluster of trees a short distance from the camp, where 3 trusted men stood waiting, his hand-picked security detail. 6 men in total would remain closest to him throughout the journey back, quiet, loyal men who could move as quickly through the shadows as through a royal court. "Report," Joseph said. One of the guards, a Nubian-born scout named Saram, spoke first. "We've adjusted the rotation as you asked. No one outside the escort gets closer than 20 paces without being noticed. We change patterns every 3rd hour. Another added, "The 2 foreigners, scribes they claim. They sleep lightly and keep their gear close at hand at all times. No one has caught them slipping away yet, but they're careful, too careful." Dan crossed his arms. "They haven't made a move, but they're watching us as if they're waiting for something." Joseph nodded slowly. "They know the time for mourning has passed. They may assume my guard is down, but it isn't," Dan said firmly. Joseph looked each of his guards in the eye. "If they move, I want it handled quickly. No chaos, no panic. This journey ends in peace, not blood." He turned to Dan. "Position Ephraim and Manasseh near the rear guard tomorrow. Keep them away from the center where I ride." "They won't like it," Dan said, "but they'll obey." "I'd rather them angry than dead," Joseph replied. Then quietly, "I want to return to Egypt with all my brothers. No empty saddles." The spies wait. The night air hung cool over Hebron. The hills hushed beneath a sky pierced with stars. Near the edge of the camp, beyond the outer circle of torches, 2 figures sat in partial shadow, their fire reduced to a few glowing embers buried beneath sand and ash. The older one crouched low, sharpening a small, curved blade with slow, methodical strokes. His eyes never left the firelight below, where Joseph sat among his brothers, shoulders bowed, gaze distant. "He sits like a man who finished something," the younger muttered, rolling a small date pit between his fingers. "Like a king who's won a war." The older man didn't respond at first. He finished one final stroke on the blade and tucked it away. No, not yet. He's still surrounded, still guarded. He picked up a stone and tossed it absently down the slope. "He thinks loyalty lasts beyond the grave." The younger let out a short breath, almost a laugh. "They all came. Egyptians, Hebrews, even old nobles from the court. I saw one of them leave an offering at his feet." "Grief makes men foolish," the elder replied, "and fools are easiest to kill." They both looked out toward the cave. The stone had been rolled into place. Israel was buried now. The morning would soon give way to celebration, relief, and complacency. "Do we move soon?" the younger asked, quieter now. "No," the older said. "Not here. Not while they still remember the weight of his name. Let them sing his praises a few more days. Let them return to Egypt believing they've secured peace." He pulled a folded scrap of parchment from his tunic, worn from the road and sealed with the temple sigil at Un. He unfolded it briefly in the firelight, letting the words glare back at him. "Let no seed of Israel rule in Egypt again." He tucked it away again. "We move when the trail grows long and eyes grow tired." The younger nodded once. "He'll never see it coming." The elder smirked faintly. That's the power of grief. It opens the door. Below them, the fire crackled. The weight of the burial still hung over the people, but the shadows were patient. They would wait, and when the time came, they would strike. Rachel. The morning after Israel's burial rose calm and golden. The hush of the hills gave way to the quiet sounds of packing. Leather straps tightened, animals fed, tents rolled up. The sacred stillness around the cave of Machpelah was fading now, replaced by the movement of return. Joseph sat cross-legged on the earth, surrounded by his brothers. A breakfast of lentils, bread, and dates was shared over a simple cloth. Nearby, Ephraim and Manasseh sat eating silently, their gazes still lingering on the cave behind them. The conversation was soft, mostly logistical. How far to the next spring, what path to take, which guards would ride forward. But as the final crust of bread passed through his hands, Joseph looked up, his voice low and unexpected. "Where was she buried?" he asked. "Rachel, my mother." The words cut through the morning. The brothers stilled. Even Benjamin stopped chewing. He blinked. I have wondered that same thing." Reuben looked to Levi. Simeon looked away. Joseph glanced around, searching their faces. "I remember crying and Jacob's silence, but after that," he shook his head slowly, "everything else is scattered. I never knew what was real and what I imagined." It was Levi who finally broke the silence. He leaned forward, his voice steady, gentle. "She died on the road," he said. "We were traveling south from Bethel. It was her time. She went to labor near Ephraim. The pain was long, violent. She was gone before nightfall." Joseph's jaw tightened. "And no one ever went back?" "No," Levi said. "Israel buried her there, set a stone to mark the place. But we didn't stay. We kept moving. Flocks, herds, responsibilities." He paused. "And grief. None of us knew how to carry it properly back then." Joseph lowered his head. "All these years, I thought I'd just forgotten. But maybe I blocked it all." Benjamin stared at the ground, his hand slowly closing around the edge of the water jug. "She gave her life for mine," he said quickly. "All I've ever had of her is that, her death story." He looked at Joseph. "I've spent my whole life trying to be worthy of that kind of love, but it always felt like a debt I couldn't repay." Joseph leaned closer and placed a firm hand on his brother's shoulder. "You were never in debt," he said softly. "You were the light left to us, the reason Father kept walking, the reason I kept hoping." He paused, eyes searching Benjamin's face. "We are not what she lost. We are what she gave." Benjamin blinked, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Two sons of Rachel, still standing, still walking. A long silence passed between them. Then Judah said, "He loved her. You know that." "I know," Joseph said. "And I wonder if it was too much for him to love her, and then lose me not long after." Judah didn't reply. He didn't have to. Departure. By the time they stood and prepared to leave, the morning light had grown stronger. The camp had been cleared, the oxen yoked, and the scouts already sent ahead. Joseph took one last glance toward the cave, where Israel now lay beside Leah, the woman who had raised him. Then he turned toward the road south, where the old shepherd's paths split, one leading home to Egypt, the other curling west toward Bethlehem. He paused only briefly, long enough to murmur, "Someday I will stand by her stone." And then he mounted his horse. The caravan began to move, slowly at first, then gathering into its rhythm. the long march of sons, soldiers, and memory. They would not return by the same road, but the past traveled with them. Men planning. The late morning sky glowed brightly as the caravan moved steadily across the rolling hills of southern Canaan. The clink of bridles, the rhythmic thud of hooves, and the occasional cry of a goat or a snort of a camel were the only sounds for miles. Dust kicked gently behind the travelers. Joseph and Benjamin rode side by side, a respectful few paces ahead of the rest of the company, their cloaks flapping lightly in the wind. It had been hours since they spoke, both lost in their thoughts, until Joseph turned with a quiet smile. "You named your daughter Rachel." Benjamin looked over, surprised at the shift in tone. "Of course I did," he said with a soft grin. "It's the only way I can give her back life that she gave up for me." Joseph nodded slowly. "Father used to say she looks like her," Benjamin said. "Dark eyes, that same steady gaze, like she's watching everything without a word." Joseph chuckled. "Dangerous." "Oh, very." Benjamin smirked. "She keeps her brothers in order. They listen to her more than they do to me sometimes." Joseph smiled. Then his gaze drifted ahead. "About your other daughters?" Benjamin raised an eyebrow. "You mean the ones you're marrying off to your sons?" "I mean the ones I hope will find a home with them," Joseph corrected gently. "Ephraim and Manasseh have grown strong, but they need wives who understand both who they are and who they must become." Benjamin rubbed his chin. "I've been thinking about that. I have ideas." "Manasseh. He needs someone who challenges him, but also listens to him. He feels deeply. He carries things too long. He gets that from his mother. Ephraim. He leads like I do. He needs someone steady, not someone easily overwhelmed by noise or responsibility." Benjamin laughed. "That rules out two of my youngest, doesn't it?" Then he held up a finger. "Let me not be too quick. One of them already threatened a boy in the courtyard for mocking her tunic color. I think she could tame Manasseh." Joseph burst out laughing. "Ephraim will need a wife who sees the long path, not just the next step," Benjamin added. "But," Benjamin raised a hand, "I won't make final matches without consulting their mothers. I've learned that lesson." Joseph barked out a laugh. "That would go over well. Asenath nearly chased me out of the room when I first brought it up." Benjamin grinned. "My wife sent me out with figs and a warning not to promise anyone anything until they're asked." That sent both men into full laughter, loud and warm, the kind that hadn't been heard since the early days of their reconciliation. Their laughter carried down the caravan line, and soon Judah called out from behind, "What are you two plotting up there? Another treaty between Egypt and the daughters of Benjamin?" "Just arranging the next generation's headaches," Joseph called back. Reuben snorted. "Heaven help us." "Speak for yourself," Zebulun said. "My sons will need wives too. Shall we send word to the Midianites?" Issachar leaned over to Naphtali. "I'll take a Midianite over one of Benjamin's little generals. I've seen them fight over figs." Even Simeon, usually quiet, smirked. "Let them marry. Then let's see who actually rules." The whole caravan rippled with chuckles, easing the weight of the road. For a moment, the brothers were simply that, brothers again, sharing the absurdity and affection of life. At the rear. Meanwhile, Ephraim and Manasseh rode near the back, flanked by 2 mounted guards and a small group of attendants. The dust of the road clung to their boots and cloaks. The distance from the front irritated them more than the ride itself. Manasseh shifted in his saddle, eyes narrowed. "What are they laughing about now?" Ephraim huffed, "Probably planning our futures without us." "I hate this," Manasseh muttered. "Like we're children being hidden from the firelight." He nudged his mount forward, but the guard on his right reached out with his staff, barring the horse with a firm but respectful tone. Your father asks that you remain toward the rear until we cross into Egyptian patrol land, Manasseh glared. We're not children. No, sir, the guard replied calmly. But we're not taking chances. They're not just Pharaoh's men, Ephraim added quietly. They're loyal to father. They'd lay down their lives for him, without question. Manasseh followed his brother's gaze, his frown softening. That's why we stay back, Ephraim said. Not because we're weak, because they won't risk losing us. His gaze drifted to the guards flanking them, watching with practiced ease. Ephraim tugged at his reins, holding his brother back. Let it go for now. Manasseh scowled, but obeyed. It's just, they're planning on marriages up there. I can feel it. Ephraim smirked faintly. They're our uncles. They probably think they're doing us a favor. Manasseh frowned, and still they rode on. Unseen Watcher. Golden light slipped behind the western hills, casting long shadows across the caravan as it wound its way through the lower passes. Laughter still echoed from the front where Joseph and his brothers rode, and the dust from the road curled upward in lazy plumes. Far from the noise, the two spies sat crouched behind a rocky outcrop, positioned slightly uphill and overlooking the caravan's trail. They had paused ahead of schedule, pretending to tighten saddle gear and check their packs. Now, they watched carefully. They've let their guard down, the younger spy murmured. Did you hear that laughter? The elder nodded slowly, eyes locked on Joseph. They think the worst is behind them. That the morning is over, the younger flickered the edge of his cloak. And those two sons, kept at the rear like cargo, they'll be exposed soon enough. If we strike during camp, we can finish it before anyone draws a blade. No, the elder said, voice calm. We strike when they least expect it, when Joseph is off alone, when the light fades but before the stars are clear. He pulled a small bronze ring from his pouch, its crest bearing the hidden seal of Amun's inner circle. The priesthood watches for our return. If we fail, they will bury us deeper than the Hebrew tombs. The younger frowned. Then we don't fail. They watched again in silence. Ahead of them, Joseph was still laughing, his shoulders shaking with warmth, his hand brushing his horse's mane as he joked with Benjamin. His brothers leaned in close, teasing, and loud and full of life. The elder spy sneered. He's forgotten the pit. Let's remind him. Unbeknownst to them, they were not alone. High above, nestled in the cleft of a narrow slope, shaded by a cluster of thorn bush and stone, Dan lay still, pressed low, wrapped in a weathered cloak, the color of dust. He had broken away from the main group hours ago, slipping into the wilderness under the pretense of checking a water route. No one had followed. With so many officials, guards, and servants moving within the caravan, his absence raised no alarms. Except for Joseph. Joseph had seen the flicker of his movement, and Joseph had given the slightest nod. Now, Dan watched. He couldn't hear their words, but he saw their posture, the way they crouched too low, the way they didn't relax like travelers at rest. He noticed how their eyes remained too focused. Their movements were too controlled. They weren't pilgrims. They weren't mourners. He counted the distance. He marked the wind. He kept still. Soon, he would circle back toward Joseph's tent under the cover of dust. But not yet. For now, he watched the watchers, and he waited. Moving closer. The snap of wood echoed through the hills like a cracking whip. One of the rear carts buckled against a stone buried in the dirt path, its wheels breaking sharply to one side. Supplies spilled. A clay jar shattered. Dust rose in a cloud. Cries went up, Guards moved quickly to assist. 2 men, unassuming in their tan robes, were among the first to respond. The temple spies. They moved with trained ease, lifting bundles, offering advice. One of them examined the wheel, pointing to the axle. "Lift here," he instructed. "The angle's off. It must be wedged before the wheel can be replaced." The guards welcomed their help. No one questioned them. They were scribes, after all, part of Pharaoh's entourage. But the 2 men weren't watching the cart. They were watching Ephraim and Manasseh. The boy sat nearby, momentarily unguarded as the soldiers focused on the broken cart. Manasseh had dismounted and was watching the repairs with open curiosity. Ephraim leaned against a tree, arms crossed. "They're never far from him," the younger spy said under his breath. "We strike when they are," the elder replied. Neither knew they had been marked in return. The Servant and the Spring. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low, Benjamin walked alone to draw water, just beyond the edge of the camp. The spring ran quietly beneath an overhang, and a line of clay jugs waited to be filled. He was crouching, arms wet to the elbows, when a young servant stepped up beside him, carrying a second jug, thin, sharp-eyed, no more than 17 years old. "May I help, my lord?" the boy asked, kneeling beside him. Benjamin glanced sideways. "I don't know your face." "I'm with Lord Ayah's train," the servant replied. "But not truly." He leaned closer. "My grandfather once served Pharaoh. He was in prison a long time ago. A Hebrew man interpreted his dream and saved his life." A chill rippled through Benjamin's chest. His hand slipped slightly on the jug's rim, water slushing over his fingers. He steadied it, masking the flicker of panic behind a calm voice. "The butler?" he asked. The boy nodded. "My name is Amar. My grandfather, Rakem, told me if you ever find the man again, serve him. Protect him. He serves a God who sees everything." Benjamin's heartbeat slowed. "Why are you telling me this now?" Zamar glanced back towards the tents. "There's a plan to kill him, Joseph, from my master, Lord Ayar. He blames him for Egypt's refusal of trade. He said once the body is in the cave, Joseph's blood will flow." Benjamin's face tightened. Zamar added, "He travels with armed men. They won't strike with blades drawn. They'll wait for silence. They'll make it look like an accident or a message." Benjamin nodded once. "You've done well," he said. "Go. Tell no one else, not even those you trust." Zamar disappeared back into the night. Benjamin stood alone by the water, jug half filled, pulse racing. He had to move quickly. The inner circle forms. Joseph stood near the fire, hands clasped behind his back, speaking quietly with Amun, when Benjamin appeared, face grim. "I need a word," he said. Joseph followed him to the edge of camp, where the shadows cloaked them in quiet. Benjamin relayed the warning in full. When he finished, Joseph's face was unreadable. "You trust this servant?" Benjamin asked. "I do. Rakem was the butler. I remember." Joseph did remember it all, the face, the dreams, the sudden freedom. He exhaled. "Then it's worse than we thought. 2 threats, neither aware of the other." "2 threats? Who is behind the other threat?" Benjamin could hardly believe the turn of events. "High priest Neferah, most likely. They have been trying to kill me from the moment I took office." He thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Bring Naphtali, Judah, and Zebulun. Dan is already watching. I'll call him in when we move." Benjamin hesitated. "Not Levi?" "Not yet," Joseph said carefully. "He strikes too quickly. I need a clear head first." Benjamin agreed. Within the hour, they were gathered in Joseph's tent. Quiet men, quick minds, strong hands. They listened in silence as Joseph relayed both threats. the temple spies, and now Lord Ayah's assassins. 2 groups, he said, his voice steady. They plan to strike when we least expect it. We will turn that against them. Judah's mouth curled. Divide them. Divide and observe, Joseph nodded. And when the time comes, choose which falls first. Outside, the stars shimmered coldly in the sky. The caravan rested, but the sons of Israel were awake, and now they were ready.
You've been listening to the Moses Chronicles Prelude, narrated by M. McIntosh. To explore the full audiobook, purchase it in digital or printed form, or discover companion writings, visit moseschronicles.com. For more sacred fiction, subscribe and journey with us through promises, exile, and deliverance. New chapters are released weekly. Until then, may the quiet still speak.